My mom snooped in my husband's office and found the pregnancy surprise box I made for him with a world's best dad mug. She accused him of having an affair baby, so I had to tell her about my high-risk twin pregnancy, and now she won't stop harassing us, even claiming she put a curse on our house. My husband and I are currently 4 months pregnant with twins, and we're absolutely over the moon. We've been trying to conceive for nearly 3 years, and when we finally got that positive test, we both cried for hours. However, the pregnancy is extremely high risk due to some complications, so I've been on modified bed rest, and we decided to keep everything quiet until we knew both babies and I would be okay. When I first found out I was pregnant, I spent days planning the perfect surprise for my husband. I put together this beautiful gift box with a world's best dad mug, the tiniest baby onesie I could find, and a baby book to track all the precious firsts. I had it all planned out. He'd come home from his stressful day at work, and I'd hand him this mysterious box. The look on his face when he opened it was priceless. He literally fell to his knees and just held me, sobbing with joy. At that point, we had no idea I was carrying twins, so there was only one of everything in that special box. The very next day, my mom showed up at our house unannounced, which is something she's done constantly since we bought a place just 20 minutes from her home. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother, but she's always been incredibly overbearing and has absolutely zero concept of personal boundaries. She treats our house like it's her own, walking in without knocking, rearranging my kitchen, and commenting on everything from our decor to our marriage. I left her alone in the living room for maybe 10 seconds while I went to grab us some tea. That's all it took. When I came back, she wasn't there. I found her in my husband's office, holding the pregnancy surprise box, having opened it and examined every single item inside. She came charging out like a woman possessed, waving the world's best dad mug and screaming that my husband was having an affair baby. She'd convinced herself he had a secret dad box hidden away because some other woman was pregnant with his child. I tried deflecting by asking why she was snooping in his private office. She had the audacity to claim she was looking for the bathroom in a house she'd visited hundreds of times. Even if that ridiculous lie were true, why would she open drawers and go through personal items? She kept demanding to know why I wasn't absolutely furious about my husband's supposed affair, why I was trying to make her the bad guy when he was clearly cheating right under my nose. I knew I had two choices: tell her the truth about my pregnancy, or let her run wild with rumors that my faithful, loving husband was a cheater. Reluctantly, I told her that I had made the box because we were expecting. Her entire demeanor changed instantly. She started shrieking about finally being a grandma, how she'd waited too long for this moment, and immediately pulled out her phone to call her best friend Linda. I practically had to wrestle the phone from her hands, begging her not to tell anyone yet. She was absolutely indignant, insisting she had to tell Linda because they never keep secrets from each other. I begged, pleaded, and practically got on my knees before she finally, grudgingly agreed to keep quiet. Within 24 hours, I had received congratulations from her entire book club, her hairdresser, the cashier at her grocery store, and roughly half the town. According to my mom, they all promised to keep the secret too. Now she won't stop harassing me about doctor's appointments, ultrasounds, and test results, claiming she deserves every piece of information as the baby's granny. She actually had the audacity to demand she be in the delivery room instead of my husband, the actual father of these babies. I shut that down so fast her head spun. She also informed me that she and her friends were already planning my baby shower, despite never asking if I even wanted one. The stress from her constant calls, texts, and unexpected visits during an already complicated pregnancy was becoming unbearable. My husband started screening my calls and intercepting her demands, but yesterday she sent a text that pushed me over the edge. She claimed it was her right as a loving parent to know every detail about her child's and future grandchildren's health. That's when my husband and I decided enough was enough. We arranged to meet her at a local cafe this morning for a serious conversation. She arrived bubbling with excitement, immediately asking if I'd reconsidered letting her in the delivery room and demanding to know the gender for her shower planning. I took a deep breath and calmly explained that while I loved her and appreciated her excitement, she had robbed us of the joy of announcing our own pregnancy. Her snooping, her accusations against my husband, and her complete disregard for our wishes had crossed every boundary we had. Her inability to keep a secret, despite explicitly promising to do so, proved she couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. She was furious, but could barely defend herself, only claiming she shared the news because she was proud. She actually said her biggest crime was being excited to be a granny. Then came the personal attacks. She blamed my husband for changing me for the worse, and claimed I was depriving my baby of a grandmother. She stormed out, saying not to contact her unless I was ready to apologize. That night, she sent the most unhinged text yet. She claimed to have placed a curse on our house and marriage. The only way to remove it was to be reasonable about her grandparent rights. We thought she was bluffing until we found a creepy bundle of twigs, hair, and herbs under our bed. We threw it out immediately and have a locksmith coming tomorrow. We're going completely no contact until after the babies arrive, but knowing my mom's escalating behavior, this is definitely not over. The locksmith arrived early the next morning, and I watched from the couch as he changed every lock in our house. My husband took the day off work to handle everything while I rested, doctor's orders. The locksmith worked methodically through each door, and with every new lock installed, I felt a small weight lift from my chest. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the morning. First came texts from my aunt asking if everything was okay between mom and me. Then my cousin wanted to know why mom was so upset. By noon, I had messages from at least 6 different family members, all with the same theme. Mom was devastated, I was being cruel, and surely we could work this out. I showed each message to my husband, who deleted them without responding. He made me promise not to engage with any of them, at least not today. The stress wasn't good for the babies or me, and we both knew it. That afternoon, while my husband was in the kitchen making lunch, I heard a car pull into our driveway. Through the window, I saw my mother's silver sedan. My heart started racing as I watched her march up to our front door with a large gift bag in her hands. She tried her key first, jamming it into the lock repeatedly. When that didn't work, she rang the doorbell over and over, then started pounding on the door. My husband rushed from the kitchen and stood protectively between me and the entrance. Through the door, we could hear her shouting about bringing gifts for her grandchildren, how she'd spent all morning shopping for baby clothes. She alternated between tearful pleas and angry demands, insisting we were being ridiculous and that she had every right to see her pregnant daughter. After 10 minutes of this, our neighbor came outside to see what was happening. Mom immediately launched into a sob story about being locked out of her own daughter's house while trying to deliver baby gifts. I could hear her voice carrying across the yard, telling anyone who would listen about her cruel, ungrateful daughter. My husband finally opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain on. He told her calmly but firmly that she needed to leave, that we would contact her when we were ready. She tried to shove the gift bag through the small opening, but he refused to take it. That's when she really lost it. She screamed that we were denying her grandchildren their heritage, that I would regret this when I needed her help with the twins. She threatened to tell everyone in the family what horrible people we were, how we were using the babies as weapons against her. The neighbors started recording on her phone, which finally made mom realize she was making a scene. She threw the gift bag at our door and stormed back to her car, shouting that we'd be sorry. Inside the bag were dozens of baby items, all in pink and blue, despite not knowing the genders yet. Each item had the tags removed and mom's initials embroidered on them. There was also a card explaining these were special grandma gifts that only she could give the babies, and that I'd understand their importance when I wasn't being controlled by my husband. That evening, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, embarrassment, I answered. It was Linda, Mom's best friend, calling to mediate. She launched into a lecture about how Mom had been planning for grandchildren for years, how she'd already bought furniture for a nursery at her house, how devastated she was by our cruelty. I tried explaining about the snooping, the broken promises, the curse threat, but Linda brushed it all off. According to her, Mom was just excited and maybe got a little carried away. Surely I could understand that. After all, I'd want my mother involved when the babies came and I needed help. When I stayed firm, Linda's tone shifted. She mentioned how Mom had been so generous over the years, helping with our wedding, giving us money when we were starting out. Wasn't it selfish to cut her off now? She even suggested that pregnancy hormones were making me irrational and that I'd regret this later. My husband took the phone from my shaking hands and told Linda never to contact us again before hanging up. But the calls didn't stop there. Over the next few days, we heard from Mom's sister, her book club president, and even her hairdresser, all with versions of the same message. We were breaking Mom's heart and destroying our family. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They'd start sympathetic, saying they understood pregnancy was stressful. Then they'd share how upset Mom was, often with dramatic details about her crying or not eating. Finally, they'd suggest we were overreacting and should reconcile for the sake of the babies. My dad called on the third day. My parents had divorced years ago, but apparently Mom had reached out to him in desperation. He was more understanding than the others, but still thought we should consider supervised visits. When I explained about the curse threat and the creepy bundle under our bed, he went quiet. Then he admitted this wasn't the first time Mom had done something like that. During their divorce, she'd left similar items in his apartment and claimed to have hexed his new relationship. The stress was taking its toll. I started having minor contractions, and my doctor ordered complete bed rest. My husband had to return to work, but installed cameras around our property first. He also changed our phone numbers and gave the new ones only to my doctor and his parents. For a few days, we had peace. I focused on staying calm, reading baby books, and keeping my feet elevated. My husband's parents, who lived several states away, were nothing but supportive. They sent care packages and offered to come help after the babies were born, but only when we were ready for visitors. Then Mom discovered our new security measures. The cameras caught her trying to approach our house 3 different times. Once, she had my aunt with her, and they spent 20 minutes trying every window and door. Oh, my heart goes out to this poor woman dealing with so much stress while she needs to be resting for her babies. The way her mom tried to force those gifts through the door crack and then threw them at the house when she couldn't get her way is just heartbreaking for everyone involved. I can feel how scared she must have been hearing all those family members calling and trying to guilt her into giving in, especially when Linda brought up past help as a way to manipulate her. Another time, she left a box on our porch with a note saying it contained family heirlooms for the babies. My husband disposed of it without opening it, remembering what happened with the last gift she left. The situation escalated when Mom figured out I was on bed rest. Somehow she'd gotten information from someone at my doctor's office, though they swore they hadn't released any details. She started telling everyone I was dying, that the pregnancy was calling me, and that she needed to be there to say goodbye to her daughter. This lie spread through our extended family like wildfire. My phone might have had a new number, but my social media didn't. I woke up one morning to dozens of messages from cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all offering condolences and asking about my final wishes. My husband had to send a mass message explaining that I was fine, just on preventive bed rest, and that Mom was lying. This caused a family divide. Some believed us and were appalled by Mom's behavior. Others thought we were downplaying my condition to keep Mom away, and that we were being needlessly cruel in her time of grief. Mom then tried a new tactic. She started showing up at my husband's workplace, waiting in the parking lot to confront him. She'd cry about missing her daughter, beg for just one photo of me to know I was okay. Security eventually had to escort her off the premises, but she kept coming back. The cameras at home recorded her leaving things at our door almost daily. Baby clothes, food containers, letters, photo albums from my childhood. Each delivery came with increasingly desperate notes about how she just wanted to help, how she was sorry for whatever she'd done wrong, how the babies needed their grandmother's love. But the nighttime visits were the worst. She'd stand at the edge of our property, just outside the range of the motion lights, and stare at our house. Sometimes she'd be there for hours. Once, she brought candles and appeared to be performing some kind of ritual on our lawn. My husband had to go out and spray the hose to wash away whatever she'd drawn in the dirt. My mother-in-law offered to fly in early to help, but we didn't want to drag her into this mess. Instead, my husband started working from home as much as possible. His boss was understanding, especially after hearing about the workplace visits. 2 weeks into our no-contact period, things reached a breaking point. I woke up from an afternoon nap to find Mom's face pressed against our bedroom window. She was standing on a ladder, trying to see inside. When our eyes met, she started crying and pressing her hands against the glass, mouthing words I couldn't understand. My scream brought my husband running. He rushed outside and found her trying to jimmy the window open with a screwdriver. When he demanded she get down, she became hysterical, claiming she just wanted to see her baby, that we were torturing her by keeping her away. The neighbors called the police this time. 2 officers arrived and had to physically help Mom down from the ladder. She sobbed the entire time, telling them about her pregnant daughter who wouldn't speak to her, how she was just a concerned mother trying to check on her sick child. The officers were sympathetic but firm. They explained she was trespassing and that she needed to respect our wishes. They didn't arrest her, but made it clear that if she returned, there would be consequences. Mom left with the ladder still propped against our house, wailing about her rights as a grandmother. That night, my husband and I lay in bed, both unable to sleep. The stress was affecting everything. I was terrified about what this was doing to the babies, and he was exhausted from trying to protect us while maintaining his job. We knew something had to give, but we didn't know what else to do. The next morning brought a new development. My husband's mother called to say she'd received a strange package at her home 3 states away. Inside was a letter from my mom, explaining that she was trying to reach her future grandchildren's other grandmother to discuss the situation. The package also contained copies of ultrasound photos we'd never given her, which meant she'd either stolen them or gotten them from someone at the doctor's office. My mother-in-law was disturbed by the letter's contents. Mom had written pages about how we were unstable, how I was risking the babies' lives by refusing her help, and how my husband was controlling and abusive. She begged my mother-in-law to intervene, to talk sense into her son, and even suggested they work together to ensure the baby's safety once they were born. This was the final straw. We couldn't live like this anymore, constantly looking over our shoulders, worried about what Mom would do next. The stress was dangerous for my pregnancy, and we still had months to go before the twins arrived. We needed to find a solution that would protect our growing family while dealing with Mom's increasingly erratic behavior. My husband started researching our options while I tried to rest, though sleep was nearly impossible with the constant anxiety. We both knew this situation would only get worse once the babies were born. Mom's obsession was escalating, and her tactics were becoming more desperate and disturbing. Something had to change, and soon. My husband spent the entire night researching restraining orders and harassment laws while I tossed and turned, unable to find a comfortable position. The twins seemed restless too, kicking more than usual. By morning, we had a plan. We would document everything, keep detailed records, and if Mom showed up again, we'd have no choice but to involve the authorities more formally. The documentation process consumed our morning. My husband organized every text message, voicemail, and security camera footage into dated folders. I wrote detailed accounts of each incident, my hand cramping as I filled page after page. We photographed the bizarre items she'd left, the damaged window frame from her her attempted break-in, and even the remnants of her lawn ritual that hadn't completely washed away. Around lunchtime, my sister called from our hometown 2 hours away. She rarely involved herself in family drama, preferring to stay neutral, but Mom had shown up at her workplace that morning. My sister worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and Mom had caused such a scene in the emergency room that security had to escort her out. She'd been demanding my sister's help in staging a wellness check, claiming I was being held captive by my abusive husband. My sister's voice shook as she described how Mom had cornered her in the break room afterward, grabbing her shoulders and insisting she had to save me before it was too late. When my sister refused to participate in whatever scheme Mom was planning, she'd been called a traitor to the family. Mom had stormed out, but not before announcing to the entire nursing staff that her daughters had abandoned her. The call left me shaking. My husband immediately contacted his company's HR department to warn them about potential disruptions. They assured him they'd already increased security after the parking lot incidents and had Mom's photo at all entrances. His boss even offered him extended work-from-home privileges until the situation resolved. That afternoon brought an unexpected ally. My husband's Aunt Natalie, a retired family counselor, called after hearing about the situation from my mother-in-law. She listened without judgment as we explained everything, occasionally making thoughtful humming sounds. When we finished, she offered to fly in and help mediate, but more importantly, she gave us invaluable advice about dealing with someone experiencing what she called grandparent psychosis. She explained that some people become so fixated on the idea of grandchildren that they lose perspective entirely. The combination of empty nest syndrome, unfulfilled expectations, and the loss of control could trigger extreme behaviors. She recommended we maintain firm boundaries while documenting everything, exactly what we were already doing. Her validation meant everything. My doctor's appointment that week required careful planning. We couldn't risk Mom discovering the location or timing, so my husband took a circuitous route, doubling back several times to ensure we weren't followed. The appointment itself was stressful enough without the added paranoia. The doctor expressed concern about my blood pressure and the frequency of my contractions. She emphasized that stress was dangerous for the pregnancy and wrote a letter documenting the medical necessity of limiting stressful interactions. On the way home, we stopped at a print shop to make copies of the doctor's letter. My husband had the idea to send it to key family members who'd been pressuring us to reconcile. Maybe medical documentation would carry more weight than our pleas for understanding. We were wrong. Within hours of sending the letters, my phone exploded with messages through social media. Cousins accused us of manipulation. Aunts claimed we were exaggerating. One particularly nasty message from Mom's book club friend suggested we'd forged the doctor's note. The family divide deepened, with battle lines drawn between those who believed us and those who thought we were monsters. My husband's parents decided to visit earlier than planned. They arrived 3 days later, bringing a sense of normalcy we desperately needed. My father-in-law immediately took over cooking duties while my mother-in-law helped me organize the nursery. Neither of them judged or questioned our decisions. They simply provided the support we needed. Their presence seemed to embolden Mom. The very night they arrived, she appeared at our door with reinforcements. This time, she'd brought her sister, 2 cousins, and Linda. They stood on our lawn like some bizarre intervention squad, taking turns ringing the doorbell and calling out through the door. My mother-in-law peeked through the blinds and gasped at the spectacle. My father-in-law handled it brilliantly. He stepped onto the porch, calm and authoritative, and informed them they were trespassing. When Mom's sister tried to push past him, claiming family had rights, he simply closed the door. The group remained on the lawn for another hour, their voices growing louder and more desperate. Eventually, a neighbor must have complained because a police car arrived, and they scattered like startled birds. The next morning, we discovered Mom had been busy overnight. Every car on our street had a flyer under the windshield wiper. The flyers featured a photo of me from 2 years ago and text claiming I was missing, possibly being held against my will. It urged anyone with information to contact Mom immediately and listed her phone number. My husband collected every flyer he could find while I watched from the window, mortified. Our neighbor, the one who'd recorded Mom's earlier outburst, knocked on our door that afternoon. She brought us a plate of cookies and her own security camera footage. She'd captured Mom placing the flyers at 3 a.m., dressed entirely in black like some sort of suburban ninja. She also mentioned that several neighbors had received strange calls asking about our daily routines and whether they'd seen any signs of distress. My contractions worsened that evening. My mother-in-law timed them while my husband rubbed my back. They were irregular but painful, and I could see the worry in everyone's eyes. We debated going to the hospital, but I was terrified Mom might have contacts there who'd alert her. Instead, we called my doctor's emergency line. She prescribed medication and strict bed rest, emphasizing that I needed to avoid all stress. Avoiding stress proved impossible. I noticed how the OP builds layers of support for themselves, while also showing how the mother keeps finding new ways to push boundaries. The detail about the mother-in-law peeking through blinds and gasping creates a clear picture of how shocking this behavior looks to outsiders. The way the father-in-law handles the group at the door shows real skill, no arguing, just a chill guy. What strikes me most is how the mother dressed in black at 3 a.m. to put up flyers, which shows she's planning these actions carefully, not just acting on impulse. Mom had discovered my husband's parents were visiting and launched a new campaign. She called their hotel repeatedly, leaving messages about their son's abusive behavior. She showed up at restaurants where she thought they might be dining. She even contacted their friends back home, spreading her narrative about being kept from her dying daughter. My father-in-law finally confronted her in a grocery store parking lot. I wasn't there, but he described the encounter later. She'd followed him from the store, shouting accusations. When he turned to face her, she'd broken down completely, sobbing about her rights as a grandmother, how she dreamed of this moment her entire life. He'd stood there, letting her exhaust herself, then quietly told her that her behavior was ensuring she'd miss everything she claimed to want. That seemed to break something in her. The daily visits stopped. The phone calls ceased. For 3 blessed days, we had peace. I should have known it was too good to last. My husband returned to the office for an important meeting, leaving me with his parents. I was reading in bed when my mother-in-law brought me lunch. She'd barely set the tray down when we heard the back door slam open. Mom had somehow gotten a copy of our new key, or perhaps she'd kept a spare we didn't know about. She burst into the bedroom wild-eyed and frantic, clutching a folder of papers. Before anyone could react, she was at my bedside, grabbing my hands and insisting she had proof that my husband was dangerous. The folder contained printed emails and text messages, clearly fabricated, showing conversations between my husband and imaginary women. She'd created an entire fictional narrative of his supposed double life. My father-in-law physically removed her from the room while she screamed about saving her daughter. My mother-in-law called 911 while I hyperventilated, clutching my belly as pain shot through my abdomen. The stress had triggered real contractions this time, regular and intensifying. The police arrived first, followed closely by an ambulance. While officers dealt with Mom in our living room, paramedics checked my vital signs. My blood pressure was dangerously high, and the contractions were 4 minutes apart. They insisted on immediate transport to the hospital. As they wheeled me out, I caught a glimpse of Mom in handcuffs, still ranting about fabricated evidence and her rights as a mother. She saw me on the stretcher and began wailing, reaching toward me despite the restraints. The sound followed me all the way to the ambulance. The hospital managed to stop my labor, but I spent 3 days in the maternity ward under observation. My husband never left my side, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair and living on cafeteria food. His parents stood guard, ensuring Mom couldn't access our room even if she tried. The nurses, briefed on the situation, were incredibly protective. During those 3 days, the full extent of Mom's campaign became clear. My sister called to report that Mom had hired a private investigator to follow my husband. The investigator, ethical enough to be concerned, had actually contacted my husband's employer to warn them about his unstable client. Mom had also attempted to access my medical records through a friend who worked in medical billing, though thankfully, privacy laws prevented any breach. We learned from my aunt that Mom had been meeting with a lawyer about grandparents' rights, though he'd apparently told her she had no case given her behavior. She'd also joined online forums for alienated grandparents, where she'd found an echo chamber of people reinforcing her delusions. The posts she'd made, which my cousin screenshot and sent us, were disturbing fiction about our lives. When I was finally released, we didn't go home. My husband had arranged for us to stay at an extended stay hotel under his parents' names. Our house no longer felt safe, not with Mom having mysteriously obtained a key. His parents returned home but promised to come back for the birth. The hotel became our sanctuary. My husband worked remotely while I remained on strict bed rest. We ordered groceries for delivery and avoided social media entirely. For 2 weeks, we existed in a bubble of relative calm, focusing on keeping the baby safe and my stress levels manageable. Then came the letter from Mom's psychiatrist. Apparently, after her arrest, she'd been ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation. The psychiatrist couldn't share details, but he suggested a family session might be beneficial. We declined immediately. Mom needed help, but we couldn't be part of her healing process, not while I was still pregnant and vulnerable. My dad reached out again, this time with disturbing news. Mom had shown up at his house in the middle of the night, convinced he was hiding me in his basement. She'd broken a window trying to get in and had been found by police wandering his backyard, calling my name. He decided to file his own restraining order. The family fractures deepened. Those who'd supported Mom began reaching out with apologies as her behavior became increasingly impossible to defend. My aunt admitted she'd been scared during their attempted forced visit. My cousin confessed Mom had asked her to plant a recording device in our home. Even Linda had backed away after Mom suggested they hire someone to retrieve me. With just 6 weeks until my due date, we had to make hard decisions. We found a new rental house in a different neighborhood, one with better security and no connection to our previous address. My husband hired movers to pack our belongings while we stayed away. We changed doctors, switched hospitals, and essentially disappeared from our old life. The move exhausted me, but it felt necessary. Our new home had a security system, cameras, and a fenced yard. Our neighbors didn't know us or our history. We could grocery shop without looking over our shoulders. This is getting a bit intense. Mom actually broke into their house with a fake key and made up all these crazy stories about the husband cheating. It's crazy that she pushed the poor woman into early labor with all that stress, and now they're having to hide in hotels and move to a whole new house just to get away from her. The part where Mom showed up at the dad's house in the middle of the night looking in his basement really shows how far she's lost touch with reality. For the first time in months, I could sit on my own porch without fear. Mom discovered our disappearance when she was released from her mandatory psychiatric hold. According to family members, she'd gone to our old house and found it empty. She'd sat on the lawn for hours, neighbors reported, just staring at the windows. When the new tenants arrived, she'd accused them of being part of the conspiracy. Her spiral accelerated. She quit her job to dedicate herself full-time to finding us. She hired a second private investigator, though he also refused to take the case once he understood the situation. She printed missing person posters with my photo and tried to file a report, though police quickly determined I wasn't actually missing. My sister became her next target. Mom camped outside her apartment, convinced she knew our location. My sister had to get her own restraining order after Mom followed her to work repeatedly. The hospital where she worked eventually banned Mom from the premises entirely. Through it all, my pregnancy progressed. The twins grew stronger despite the chaos surrounding their impending arrival. My husband transformed into an even more devoted protector, handling everything so I could focus on staying calm and healthy. His parents visited again, bringing baby supplies and emotional support. With a month left in my pregnancy, we received unexpected news. Mom had been arrested again, this time for attempting to access hospital records illegally. She'd posed as a social worker, complete with fake credentials, trying to find information about high-risk twin pregnancies. The charges were serious this time, including identity theft and fraud. Her arrest brought mixed emotions, relief that she couldn't reach us, but sadness about what she'd become. This wasn't the mother who'd raised me, who'd been overprotective but loving. This was someone consumed by obsession, destroyed by her inability to accept boundaries. My husband suggested we write her a letter, not to reconcile, but to provide closure. We spent hours crafting it, explaining our position one final time. We told her about the damage she'd caused, the stress she'd put on a high-risk pregnancy, the family she'd fractured. We also expressed hope that she'd get help and find peace, even if we couldn't be part of her life. We sent the letter through her lawyer, along with ultrasound photos of the twins. It was our final gesture, an acknowledgement of what she'd lost through her own actions. We made it clear that any future relationship would depend entirely on her getting treatment and respecting our boundaries, though we doubted that day would ever come. The response came through her psychiatrist. Mom had read the letter during a therapy session and broken down completely. For the first time, she'd shown genuine recognition of her behavior's impact. The psychiatrist cautiously suggested this might be a breakthrough, though he warned against premature hope. As my due date approached, we prepared for the twins' arrival in our secret sanctuary. The nursery came together beautifully, painted in soft yellows and greens. We'd chosen names that honored both families while creating new beginnings. My husband assembled cribs while I folded tiny clothes, both of us pretending our hearts weren't broken by the circumstances. My mother-in-law flew in a week before the due date, ready to help however needed. She brought gifts from extended family who supported us, along with messages of love and encouragement. She also brought news that Mom had entered an intensive outpatient program, finally accepting that she needed help. The contractions started on a Tuesday morning, different from the stress-induced ones I'd experienced before. These were purposeful, progressive, and accompanied by a strange sense of calm. My husband drove carefully to the hospital while his mother followed in her rental car. We'd pre-registered under aliases to prevent any unwanted visitors. Labor lasted 18 hours. My husband never left my side, coaching me through each contraction, reminding me to breathe when the pain overwhelmed me. His mother waited in the hallway, standing guard like a protective sentinel. The medical staff, aware of our situation, were discreet and supportive. When the twins finally arrived, healthy despite their dramatic gestation, I sobbed with relief and joy. My son came first, screaming his displeasure at the bright world. My daughter followed minutes later, quieter, but equally perfect. My husband cut both umbilical cords with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. In those first moments, holding our babies, the months of stress faded temporarily. We were a family, complete and protected. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The twins were worth every moment of struggle, every difficult decision, every boundary we'd had to enforce. My husband's parents met their grandchildren with appropriate joy and respect. They took photos when we offered, held the babies when invited, and never once overstepped. They showed us what healthy grandparent relationships looked like, making Mom's behavior even more stark by comparison. We spent 3 days in the hospital, cocooned in our private room. No unwanted visitors appeared. No dramatic confrontations occurred. Just us, our twins, and the beginning of our new life. It felt like emerging from a storm into sudden sunshine. The hospital discharge papers took forever to process, but I didn't mind the delay. Every extra hour in that that secure room meant one more hour before facing whatever waited outside. My husband packed our belongings methodically while I nursed the twins, their tiny fingers gripping mine with surprising strength. My mother-in-law drove us home in her rental car, while my husband followed in ours. We took different routes, meeting at the new house 20 minutes later. The precaution felt excessive, but necessary. Mom had surprised us too many times before. Our first week home passed in a blur of feedings, diaper changes, and precious little sleep. My husband's parents extended their stay, handling grocery runs and household tasks, while we adjusted to life with newborns. Their presence provided both practical help and emotional security. On day 8, my sister called with an update. Mom had completed her first week of intensive outpatient treatment. The facility had strict rules about outside contact, which explained the blessed silence. My sister had spoken with Mom's psychiatrist, who reported she was participating in therapy, but still struggling to accept responsibility for her actions. The twins' 2-week checkup required careful coordination. My husband called ahead to ensure we could use the practice's private entrance. The pediatrician, briefed on our situation, scheduled us for the last appointment of the day. Everything went smoothly until we were leaving. In the parking lot, my cousin sat in her car, clearly waiting. She approached slowly, hands visible and empty, her expression apologetic. My husband stepped protectively in front of the twins' car seats while I froze, calculating escape routes. My cousin explained she'd been sent by Mom's treatment team to deliver an apology letter. She handed my husband a sealed envelope, then backed away immediately. She admitted feeling terrible about her previous involvement and wanted us to know she supported our boundaries. She left without pushing for more interaction. We read the letter that night after the twins were settled. Mom's handwriting looked shaky, the words clearly difficult for her to write. She acknowledged the pain she'd caused, the trust she'd broken, and the boundaries she'd violated. The therapist had added a note explaining this was part of her treatment process, not an attempt at reconciliation. 3 weeks passed peacefully. We developed routines, learned our baby's different cries, and slowly began feeling like capable parents. My husband returned to work part-time, grateful for his employer's flexibility. His parents flew home but promised to return for the twins' blessing ceremony. Then the packages started arriving. Not from Mom directly, but from various online retailers. Baby clothes, toys, blankets, all addressed to us at our new home. The gift messages were blank, but we knew the source. Somehow she discovered our address. My husband contacted each company, explaining the situation and requesting they block future orders to our address. Most were understanding, though a few required official documentation. We started a new file folder, resigned to the ongoing need for paperwork. My recovery progressed well despite the stress. The twins thrived, gaining weight and meeting all their milestones. During a particularly peaceful afternoon, both babies napping simultaneously, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine contentment. The feeling was fleeting but precious. Week 5 brought an unexpected visitor. Mom's psychiatrist requested a meeting, offering to come to us rather than risk our security. My husband agreed but insisted on meeting at a neutral location. They met at a coffee shop while I stayed home with his mother and the twins. The psychiatrist shared that Mom was making progress, but had fixated on the idea of earning forgiveness through grand gestures, hence the packages. He was working with her to understand that respecting boundaries meant no contact at all, not finding creative workarounds. He also warned that the upcoming holidays might trigger a relapse. My milk supply struggled with the ongoing stress. The lactation consultant suggested relaxation techniques and increased hydration, but we both knew the real issue. My body couldn't fully relax while constantly anticipating the next disruption. We supplemented with formula, another small casualty of the situation. 6 weeks postpartum, I attempted my first solo outing with the twins, just a quick trip to the pediatrician for their next round of vaccinations. The receptionist smiled warmly, cooing over the babies while checking us in. Everything felt normal until I noticed a woman in the waiting room staring intently at us. It was Mom's book club friend, the one who'd suggested we forged the doctor's note. She didn't approach, just watched. I texted my husband immediately. He called the office, and they discreetly moved us to a different waiting area. The woman left soon after, but the damage was done. Even routine outings felt unsafe. The twins received their shots like champions, crying briefly before settling. The pediatrician praised their growth and development. On paper, everything looked perfect. No one could see the invisible weight of constant vigilance, the exhaustion beyond normal new parent fatigue. My husband installed additional security cameras and upgraded our system to send real-time alerts to our phones. We practiced evacuation routes and established code words. It felt like preparing for war rather than raising babies, but we had no choice. Week 7 brought legal documents. Mom's arrest for identity theft and fraud had progressed through the system. The prosecutor needed our testimony for the preliminary hearing. We hired our own lawyer, determined to protect our privacy while fulfilling our legal obligations. The hearing was scheduled for week 9. We arranged for my husband's parents to watch the twins, not trusting anyone local. The courthouse felt imposing as we entered, my body still recovering from childbirth, my mind racing with anxiety. Mom looked smaller in her courtroom attire, her lawyer whispering instructions. She tried to make eye contact, but I focused on the prosecutor's questions. We testified about the harassment, the break-ins, the forged documents. Each word felt like a betrayal of the mother who'd raised me, but also a protection of the mother I'd become. The judge bound the case over for trial. I'm really curious about this psychiatrist meeting at a coffee shop. That seems like such an unusual move for a doctor to make, even if Mom is making progress in treatment. Plus this book club friend just happening to be at the pediatrician's office watching them. I wonder if Mom is somehow still pulling strings from her treatment program, using other people to keep tabs on her daughter. Mom's lawyer requested reduced bail, citing her mental health treatment. The judge agreed but imposed strict conditions. No contact with us, directly or through third parties, and continued psychiatric treatment. Violation would mean immediate incarceration. We left through a side exit, avoiding Mom's supporters gathered in the main lobby. The drive home felt surreal. We'd drawn a legal line, used the system she'd forced us to engage. There was no satisfaction in it, only exhaustion. The twins turned 2 months old on a Thursday. They'd started smiling, real social smiles that melted our hearts. My daughter was the more vocal one, cooing and gurgling constantly. My son preferred to observe quietly, his serious expression reminding me of his father. That weekend, we attempted normalcy, a walk in the park, just our little family enjoying autumn weather. The twins dozed in their stroller while we found a bench near the pond. Other parents nodded in solidarity, recognizing the exhausted but content look of new parenthood. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against better judgment, I answered. It was Mom's treatment facility, informing us she'd been hospitalized after a mental health crisis. She'd apparently had a breakdown during group therapy while discussing grandparent relationships. They needed emergency contact information for her insurance. We provided what we could without engaging further. That night, I cried while nursing the twins, not for the mother who'd terrorized us, but for the one I'd lost long before the pregnancy. The one who'd taught me to tie my shoes and bake cookies, who'd been my fierce protector before becoming my greatest threat. Week 10 brought preparation for the criminal trial. Our lawyer coached us on testimony, reminded us to stick to facts rather than emotions. The prosecutor felt confident about conviction given the evidence. We just wanted it over. My husband took extended leave from work. His employer remained supportive, but the situation was affecting his career. Another casualty of Mom's obsession. We discussed relocating after the trial, starting fresh somewhere without memories on every corner. The twins thrived 3-month checkup showed continued healthy development. They discovered their hands, spending hours examining their fingers with intense concentration. These small miracles helped balance the ongoing stress. Life persisted despite everything. Then came an unexpected ally. Dad's new wife reached out, offering support. She'd been through something similar with her own mother years ago. She shared resources for grandparent alienation situations, validated our decisions, and offered practical advice about maintaining boundaries. Her suggestion about a family safety plan proved invaluable. We created detailed protocols for various scenarios, shared them with trusted friends, and felt slightly more in control. Preparation couldn't eliminate risk, but reduced the panic. Week 12 arrived with the twins' first real laughs. My son giggled at his father's silly faces while my daughter found the mobile above her crib hilarious. Those sounds, pure joy unmarred by the world's complications, gave us strength for what came next. The trial began on a Monday. We'd arranged for round-the-clock care with my husband's parents, pumping milk between testimony sessions. The prosecution presented their case methodically. The harassment, the break-ins, the forged documents, the false identity used to access medical records. Mom's defense relied heavily on her mental health issues. Her lawyer painted a picture of a loving grandmother driven to extremes by cruel exclusion. They brought character witnesses who testified about her years of community service, her dedication to family. Our testimony remained consistent, factual, devoid of the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. We described each incident, the escalation, the fear for our unborn children. The defense tried to paint us as overreacting, but the evidence spoke louder than their insinuations. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. We waited in a small room, pumping milk and checking constantly with my in-laws about the twins. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, I felt nothing but emptiness. Victory implied winning something. This felt like loss all around. Sentencing was deferred pending psychiatric evaluation. Mom would remain in treatment, but now with a criminal record. The judge issued a permanent restraining order, regardless of the ultimate sentence. We were legally protected but emotionally drained. The drive home took forever, traffic crawling while my body ached to hold my babies. When we finally arrived, I collapsed on the couch, twins in my arms, and sobbed. My husband held all 3 of us, his own tears falling silently. In the days that followed, we slowly reclaimed our lives. The twins continued growing, blissfully unaware of the drama surrounding their arrival. We established new routines, found joy in simple moments, and began healing from months of trauma. My husband returned to work full-time, his career back on track. I joined a mother's group, carefully vetted for privacy. We made friends with other new parents, couples who knew nothing of our history. It felt like wearing a disguise, but a necessary one. The twins started sleeping longer stretches, giving us precious hours of rest. We used the time to reconnect, to remember why we'd chosen each other before chaos consumed our lives. Those quiet moments, holding hands in the dark, rebuilt our foundation. 3 weeks post-trial, Mom was sentenced to probation with mandatory psychiatric treatment. The criminal record would follow her forever, another consequence of choices she'd made. We received the news without celebration, just relief that jail time was avoided. My sister visited for the twins' 4-month milestone. She held them with wonder, marveling at their development. We talked carefully around the obvious absence, focusing on the present rather than the painful past. She'd maintained her own boundaries with Mom, another family casualty. The restraining order meant we could finally relax in public. Grocery shopping became routine instead of reconnaissance missions. The twins charmed strangers with their smiles while we slowly lowered our guard. Hypervigilance faded gradually, replaced by normal parental concern. My milk supply recovered as stress decreased. Nursing became a peaceful bonding time rather than a struggle. The twins thrived on the combination of breast milk and formula, growing chubby and content. Their pediatrician praised our flexibility, unknowing of the journey behind it. 5 months arrived with major milestones. Both twins rolled over. My daughter first, then my son determined not to be outdone. We cheered and recorded videos, building memories untainted by the past year's trauma. These moments belonged purely to us. My husband's parents visited for a week, delighting in their grandchildren's development. They respected every boundary, asked before taking photos, and never overstepped. Their example highlighted what we'd lost, but also what we protected our children from experiencing. The seasons changed, autumn fading to winter. We decorated for the twins' first holidays, creating new traditions for our small family. Each celebration felt like reclaiming something stolen, building the life we'd always envisioned. 6 months brought solid foods and endless laundry. The twins approached eating with enthusiasm, wearing more than they swallowed. These messy, joyful meals felt like victory. We were living, not just surviving. Mom's treatment team sent periodic updates through her lawyer. Progress was slow but steady. She'd accepted the restraining order, stopped attempting contact through third parties. The packages ceased. The flying monkeys retreated. Silence settled over our lives like snow. I really liked how the OP used seasons changing to show time healing this family's wounds, from autumn to winter marking their progress. And BRO, that final image of silence settling like snow is such a peaceful way to end this story. But that is all for now. See you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.